What's up, everybody? Today I've got with me Adam. He's going to show us what he loves about the Wing console. Adam works with Churchfront, and he's here at South Fellowship, and he knows this Wing console inside and out. I want him to show you what he loves about it and the things that they're doing for routing, for ins and outs, and challenges that they've overcome using this really flexible system. So, Adam, take it away.
Yeah, I'll say it did take me quite a while, and I'm still not all the way there. I don't have this board mastered, but because it is so flexible, I'm still learning new things all the time. But I think I've got it set up fairly well, and like you said, the flexibility is helping us overcome one thing being that Dante is not compatible with M1 computers. So we're pulling in sources from the stage over S16 and SD8 stage boxes, so all of those Behringer stage boxes, as well as Dante from stage for our tracks. And then we have, local inputs on the back, but then as far as outputs, we're also sending over AES-50 and then USB. So this board has, they said something like 396 inputs or something, which might be true, I didn't count it. But we can pull in AES-50C, or A, B, and C, and that's all 48 in and out, as well as USB, that's 48 in and out, and then Dante, I don't know, 128 in and out maybe. So we're using all of those ports to get to the different places: broadcast audio, front of house virtual sound check, and stage.
Very cool. So when it comes to setting up and routing, show people how you assign a source or a source to a channel, so that if they've got two S16s and they need to know, like, well, how do I get the second one to go to 17? Show us that real quick. Yeah,
one thing that I would recommend doing before you do that is knowing this vocal microphone is plugged into this floor pocket to this spot on the S16 of the stage box. So we can go to a vocal for an example. And we have here our worship pastor. And if I were just go to the input section of the board, you have a main and an alt input. So that's what is convenient for doing a virtual sound check. And then here you would just touch this, and then you would select which source you want to come from. So in this case, we have source group AES-50B because we have our stage boxes plugged into AES-50B, and we actually labeled our stage box sources. So here we have vocal 1. It is technically AES-50B13.
Okay.
So in this case, we have two SD8s that are plugged into each other. So the second one, it's one of those things where it's like 9 through, like technically on the box you'll see 1 through 8, but it's actually 9 through 16. So you have to know B13.
So you have to know how to add 8 to know where you really are.
Yeah, you have to count a little bit.
So stay in school, everybody.
Yeah, and be able to write, because if you label your inputs, it'll just make everything easier. So definitely encourage people to understand the whole system and where things are supposed to be plugged in. But that's it. You just touch it. You can change it here. And you can choose from the local in, the aux in, AES-50, A, B, or C, USB, Dante, tons of sources. You can even choose a bus, a main mix, or a matrix to be the source for your channel.
Okay. It can get complicated really fast.
It can get a little hairy, which is one of the things that I don't love, but once I put the hours in on the board, I'm sure will be super helpful, and I'll love that about it.
Yeah, keeping it simple is the name of the game. Complexity is easy, simplicity is hard. So how many local inputs are there on the Wing? Like if somebody is going from an analog snake system with their X32 right now, and they're using all local inputs, and they want to upgrade to the Wing, what would they do for local inputs here?
So there are 8 local inputs, XLR inputs. There are 8 aux inputs. So if you're running like we are, we have our Mac Mini for Pro Presenter, just a simple 1/8 inch to dual 1/4 inch auxiliary input.
So those are line level, those aren't mic level.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Yep. So that's it for the local inputs.
Okay.
So if you're looking to upgrade from an X32 to one of these, you pretty much have to buy stage boxes.
Yeah.
Or use Dante.
Right. Now, are these also compatible with the Midas M48 or M32 stage boxes?
Yeah, any Behringer Midas product, they're cross-compatible. So if you wanted a little bit nicer preamps, it might be a good move to go with the Midas M series.
Very cool. We've talked about getting stuff to the console. Tell me about the input processing. What are the things that you love about the input processors on here? How are they working for you? And what's your kind of go-to processors on the console?
Yeah, on a vocal here, to talk about the chain, there is an overview, so you can look at that, and then the actual input, and you can have your gain and your trim, high cut, low cut filter. But then here, we have an insert, and we're choosing this de-esser, which you actually set up and adjusted yesterday. So you can choose between a de-esser, a leveler, an auto rider, just another preamp, so you can add a little color.
Oh,
so,
it's got the dynamic EQ too. That one's fun.
Well.
I didn't notice that yesterday.
Yeah, so that is another option for something like a de-esser, just a little bit different. It's just cool to have that insert option right there. And then as well as the EQ, you can choose between the Wing EQ or these other ones that are based off analog units. And then another insert slot, and we're using a compressor here, so you can choose between any of these compressors. And then here, this is an effects unit input, so we're using it for pitch correction, and you can choose between any of these, which you wouldn't really necessarily put a sub-octavizer or a phaser on a vocal, but
you never know.
You never know, you could. Depends
it could be
on
the
what
new
kind
hotness. Chorus is making its way back. Just saying.
Try it out.
But you don't have to put that on an insert, just for the record.
Just to play around. And then you can send it to your different spaces, your mains. So you have 4 main outputs.
Okay.
And we're using those for our mains, which then we have separate control of our fronts and our fills, and then our subs, and we have a family foyer area. So we're able to choose where it goes from there. Another insert, we're not even using this one because we don't need that many inserts on a vocal.
Right.
And then you can send it to different buses.
Very cool. So back on the mains page, this basically eliminates the need to use a matrix for some things that are really just going to get the same mix, like a family room, like a nursery feed, like even for the lobby. Being able to simplify what you're doing and not have to use up a matrix, even though you've got plenty of matrices, that just helps things stay simple, and even being able to adjust the level. Can you change the level between what you're sending, say this channel, we're sending it to the mains. We're not actually sending it to the mains on this one, but if we were sending it to the mains, we've got our level for that. Is that independent of the fader?
Yes.
Okay, here's another fun point. If your lobby feed has, the music and it needs it at one level, and your speaking mics need to be higher than that to be, understood, so that nobody's having to sit there with a remote or the little knob outside, you could just bump up, like if the mains for, say, the music inputs are at -5, but then you go to your pastor's mic and you set that for, and they've already done this, they set it at +4, when it's going to the mains at 0, you get that extra little boost, and it makes it so that they don't have to adjust levels, and you don't have to set up a separate compressor. You just, I need a little bit more out of this one, because speaking levels are lower than music levels, but they don't have to be out in the lobby.
Correct, yeah. You could even use this for a broadcast output instead of a matrix, because you can send buses to these main outputs as well.
Right.
So, I can't think of another reason to have a matrix other than the family foyer, your separate outputs. We're using them to have separate control of our front fills and our second set of speakers. So we can control those and EQ them differently because they're different models. They require a different EQ to match.
Mixing and matching.
Yep.
Yeah. Beyond the channel processing, show us how you're routing things on the console beyond the input channels. So like we noticed on Aaron's mic, he wasn't assigned to the stereo bus. So what are you doing for routing there?
Right, so all of our drums are going to 2 different places. We have a bus, so I'll just take us to our bus master here. We have our drums bus, and so all of the drums are routed to that. And then we have our drum reverb, which, select channels are going to, not sending kick drum to the reverb or anything like that. And then we have those going to our mains.
Okay.
So we can control the overall volume, but additionally be able to put extra processing on that bus to kind of glue the drum mix together.
Yeah. Give a little extra control and safety post-fader.
Yeah. As well as another one to have the drum smash or drum, extra parallel compression basically. So it's just kick, snare, toms, super compressed, I saw you playing with it yesterday with the no stressor set to nuke. Very compressed on those parallel drums there. We have our normal drum volume as well as our parallel compression and our reverb. Those are all going to the master. So instead of individual channels going to the main mix, the individual channels are going to buses, which have some glue compression, and then sent to the main mix.
So they're acting more like a subgroup before it goes to the main bus.
Correct.
You could do remote control with a DCA, but then you can't process a DCA. So this just gives you another layer of processing. And great audio is always just a game of baby steps. A little bit more oomph and punch here, a little bit more control there, and that's one of the great things about a console that's this flexible, is you can do those little things that accumulate to become a great mix from a good mix.
Correct, yeah. And then we have a glue compressor on our master output as well, just a slight one.
Very cool.
Yeah, and you mentioned subgroups. Some of these are actually set up as subgroups because you can set the bus to be a subgroup, a individual bus. There's different options for how you can set these up to be pre-fader, post-fader, subgroup.
Right, so that's similar to the X32 that a lot of people are familiar with. So if you've poked around on that, it's the same thing over here. Tell us about the effects. Like, what do you like? What have you found that's worked well on your reverb and delay? And what are your kind of favorite go-to settings?
Right, yeah. So as far as individual channels, I like this red compressor as well as the distressor, or the no stressor, as they call it, just because I'm familiar with that.
Don't sue us, okay? Empirical Labs, don't sue us.
Wasn't us. Blame Behringer. And then on vocals, we have the vocal tuning, which is not as good as, Antares or as Waves Tune Live, but it's zero latency and it's built into the board.
Yeah.
So we're not having to send it to another computer and bring it back and deal with the issues that come from that.
It definitely helps on longer held out notes. That's where I feel it really shines, and that's really where you notice, when things aren't quite in the center of the pitch. So even if you have it set to the slower mode, and it's not grabbing all the in between notes, but on those longer notes that are held out, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, and that's how we have it set. It's correcting less than 50% or just over 50% maybe, and it's set pretty slow. So we're not using it to do auto-tune, crush.
T-Pain for worship.
Right. Another effect that I like using is we have a bass channel, and we're able to just send the low end from that, and then keep it pretty compressed. And then we have our bass drive channel, which is just gives us a little more bite and grit. So if I always think of like a song like Lion and the Lamb, where it's got like a big drivey part. You can kind of ride that in and out as needed to help with your mix, and that's kind of another icing on the cake kind of thing. Not necessary to make a mix happen, but because we have the ability to add a wing amp to it, then we can add some crunch and a little bit of buzz there. So
yeah, it's fun. There's a moment as an engineer when you actually realize that some bass is actually distorted and it works and it's cool. That's a great moment as an audio engineer when you actually the bass can have some grit. It doesn't have to be clean all the time. And then figuring out how to do that and preserve all the low end on a clean channel, I think it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I'm not sure, I have to look at where we have it set here. We have a 5-to-1 ratio on this bass compressor for the low end. So sometimes someone plays a specific note on a bass and it can seem louder than other notes. So being able to compress that a little harder and allow some dynamic to come through with the bass drive channel is kind of nice. Vocal tuning, that bass drive, like I said, compressors on our buses so that we can have a little bit of glue compression there. We're not doing anything too crazy with other, phasers or anything like that. We have delay and a reverb for our vocals and our drums, as well as an instrument. I like to keep one open for instruments for, acoustic guitar if I want it to feel a little bit more in the room and dry.
Yeah.
Especially with acoustic guitars that don't have any pedals. It's nice to add a little bit.
Yeah, a little splash or a little bit of tail to it. Helps it resonate a little longer. It can be a lot of fun. Tell me what your go-to is for your vocal reverb.
There's not a ton of options here. There are a lot of options, but I just stick to this VSS3 because within it I'm using the ambient plate, but you can choose between a lot of different presets.
Okay.
I just like plates. I think that they sound nice.
It's hard to go wrong with a plate. On drums, on vocals, on guitars. It just kind of works. It's quirky, but it works.
Yeah. So I use that, and then with our delay here, I've got just a ultra tap delay. So you can choose how many repeats there are. You can choose the pre-delay, the width, and the high cut and the low cut filter, which is nice so that you're not getting, well, for drums, any boominess in the reverb.
Right.
For vocals, any unnecessary low end from their vocal, and then the high cut being able to take out the presence and the S's and the T's from the delay. You don't really need that in your delay.
Yeah.
So.
Two.
Right, right. So just kind of warms it up and makes it feel
Makes it
nice.
the opposite of space, and it brings it closer. So yeah, always put a low pass filter on your delay. You'll thank me later. You know, one thing that's interesting, that if you're a musician and you want to play around with stuff and you don't have a pedal board yet maybe, and you want to try to get into effects, sometimes these built-in onboard effects that are like guitar pedals can be pretty cool, or they can even get you stuff that you wouldn't imagine that you wanted. You know, like the shimmer reverb effect. I probably wouldn't use it in the midst of a traditional worship song, but if there's some part where there's oohs or ahs or something, you can get creative and experiment with that. So it's always fun to do a deep dive. Whenever you're playing with effects, you're never wasting time. So don't be afraid if you've got some of these things just to try it, especially with virtual sound check. Explore all you can, because you never know when you're going to create that thing that becomes the creative moment that really becomes memorable, adds a lot of interest, and then it's just more fun to mix too.
Yeah. I was mixing a show in Nashville, and the band had this moment where they said, hey, we want to have, you know, there's this one moment in this one song, we want the reverb tail to be like a 10, 15 second, like just it's super washed out. And he brought this whole pedal rig that he was trying to figure out when to tap it at the right time. And I said, I'll take care of it. You know, I need to know when it happens within the song. And I was able to just have a 10 or 15 second reverb that I was able to push in the right way to create that moment.
Yeah.
So there are times when those kinds of things can be helpful.
Yeah, very cool. So Adam, thanks for showing us around. I appreciate you giving us your tour of the wing. Where can they find out more about Churchfront and the stuff you're doing with them?
Yeah, you can go to churchfront.com if you want to find accessibility to coaching and things like courses on the wing. You can go to worshipministryschool.com.
Cool. And you also do coaching as well, don't you?
Correct.
Yeah. So tell us more about the coaching stuff.
Yeah, so often it's through worshipministryschool.com. So if you're part of the program, you can sign up, and we have a ton of students that they call me when they get stuck. If you're going through a course or there's something that we don't have a course on, you can book a call and we get on Zoom and we can chat through it and figure things out.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for serving the church and helping people figure out how to use this stuff well, demystifying it, and showing us around the wing. Again, if you like this video, go ahead and mash that thumbs up, hit subscribe, and ding the little bell to get notified whenever we post new content. And if you have any other questions about the wing or other videos you want to see in the future, drop them down in the comments below. We'll see you next time on Adaway Audio.